Hello, everybody. My name's Aaron Heller, and I want to welcome you to the latest Google Hangout for fire engineering, our Humpday Hangout here, the first Wednesday of every month. And today's is going to be quite interesting. We've got some great guests with us again. We have Brian Zaitz, and we have Captain Mike Dugan with us. And we're hoping to get Captain Artie Bloomer to get on here as soon as his technical difficulties get worked out. And we're going to spend an hour talking about the training officer and basically the company officers level and their ability to coordinate training at the company level versus the department level and how we go about that. So a little bit about ourselves. I work in Hamilton Township, New Jersey, a little over 30 years in the fire service total, and have served as a company officer and training officer for about 18 years now. So from there, I'd like to kick it on over to Captain Dugan. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you? My name is Mike Dugan. I'm a retired captain from the FDNY. I started in the fire service in 1973. Yes, I am old. And I went on the job in New York City over from the PD to the FD in 1985. And I did 27 glorious years in the FDNY before I was forced to retire. So I'm here sitting in covering for Steve Pegram. Steve had one of his former bosses. His funeral was today, and Steve did the right thing and went where he was more required. So I'm glad to help him and support our friends at Fire Engineering.
All right. Well, thanks for stepping up, Mike, and I really appreciate it. And our other co-host, Brad French, is tied up on some other stuff that he had to do, so he couldn't make it today. And from there, we invited along with us Brian Zaitz, who's a captain at Metro West Fire Department. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. Well, give the folks just a little bit about yourself. Although I know you've been doing a ton and you're out there, so they should know you.
That's all right. It's Brian Zaitz. I've been with Metro West about 16 and a half years. I got 18 years coming up in the fire service now. Training officer, captain with those guys. It's great stuff. Board member with the ISFSI. Just getting out there trying to teach as much as I can and learn as much as I can. So it's great. So looking forward to today's conversation. I think we got some great topic. I was telling Pegram yesterday, talking to him, this is a great topic that I think kind of gets overlooked sometimes with all the other stuff going on in the industry today. So really going to be some good stuff, I think, for people to take away. Cool.
Well, welcome. I'm glad that we could all be here. And I'd be remiss in saying that, the IFSI is a big sponsor of this and an organization that's making a hard push to get the word out and do the right thing. So we want to make sure that everybody understands that and Steve being the president for one more year, I believe. So we want to get that word out there. So I guess the thing to start off is, as we look at this, we all have bosses. Everybody's got a boss at some point. Where some people work, the training comes down from a battalion or a deputy or an ops chief or something like that and filters to the companies. So I guess the question is, how do we get it from the top down to our people, to the company officer and beyond? And I think that's where a lot of the challenge lies that I've seen over the years, and just in my department, and even in the volunteer fire department that I belonged to for years. The chief would have an idea, but how did it get filtered to the crew? How did the company officers step in, and what were their roles? So who wants to jump in with that?
I'll jump in. I think that the idea of the training, and again, the training coming out from is really good and everything else. But what happens is the company officers are the backbone of any training that's done. And they're the people who determine how the training is going to impact their company, the way they do things, and what's going on. And they're kind of the filter to make sure that the training gets taught correctly the way the department wants it, but it also works proactively with that company. Because let's be honest, there are certain companies in certain locales where you know, you could teach them all the training you want in, working with a truck as far as an engine company. But if they're a single engine in the suburbs on the outskirts of the city or someplace else, and the nearest truck is 6 or 7 minutes away, that officer is going to say, listen, we're going to have to work with the truck, but first we're going to have to do some of their jobs in the beginning until they can get here and do it. So the officer is the one who takes the training and makes it relevant to that company, that really he brings it to how it's going to work for that company. And he's the backbone of getting the training done and getting the buy-in.
Excellent. Yeah, the company officer, without the company officer, and I'm prejudiced since I've been one all these years, but without the company officer, the rubber doesn't really hit the street very well. That's for damn sure. Brian?
Yeah, I think that's completely true. You know, being a company officer myself, you know, I might get an idea if I do get the communication from the chief of whatever idea it is. If it's, you know, hey, he identified a need, say on a fire, you guys look like you're a little lax on pulling hose or something like that. You know, I think it's us as company officers, our due diligence in our job to then correlate some type of training activity, drill, whatever it is, that's going to meet that need for our company specifically. You know I've empowered our company officers, you know, being a training officer on my shift. I told those guys, you know, we'll come up with ideas and things like that, but it's truly up to you guys to get out there, make stuff happen on a daily basis to really build that up. I'm a big proponent of the company level trainings and things like that. That truly is, to Captain Dugan's point of, that's the foundation for success in the fire service is that company level stuff that's going on inside, outside the firehouse, all that stuff. You know, it can come down from the chief at any level, but it's not going to be impactful if it's not coming from that company officer.
Well, that's agreed. We all agree on that. That's for sure. So I guess the next thing is, where I work, we're a 4-platoon system, which is a blessing because it's a 4-platoon system as opposed to a 2 or a 3. You know, as they say, the best part-time gig in the world. But one thing that I've found is we can put out a training schedule and we can put out an outline and a drill description and really a guideline on how we want the training run. But one of the things we try to overcome is having 4 separate departments in one firehouse. And I think that's something that a lot of people have issues with. We've seen it, and I guess one of the things that we had was implementing it was a bit of an issue because we had captains running the show from all different levels. Some guys who had been there for quite a while, some brand new ones, and trying to get everybody reined into that we're going to do it basically the same way and not have 4 separate fire departments was a little bit of a challenge. And for me as the training officer, it became a challenge. So you know, we've addressed it. I don't think we've fixed it completely. I don't think you ever will. And I think that the skills of each crew shine through in different ways too. And it starts with the company officer. But that's one of the issues we're trying to push is we need to do this the same and not A platoon doing it their way and C platoon doing it their way. And I think that's something that what experience do we have and how do we overcome that?
For us, we put out a training schedule that's been pretty effective. We work system I'm in. We have a chief officer that's training, the chief of training, if you will. And then we have 3 captains that are essentially the training officers, 1 per shift. So we're pretty fortunate that we have a pretty good system in place to support the training. You know, obviously SOPs and POMs are going to be your basis for your training, but you know, we've started putting together scenarios. So we'll tell the company officers, hey, this is what we're planning on doing, so that they're not surprised by it. And then what we found is by doing that, then these guys are kind of maybe here and there getting out and drilling themselves on those specific tasks. If we're going to go do a first due company assignment, we don't have the luxury of trucks and engines, so kind of everybody does everything in our system. So, you know, that's just it seems like for us it's been pretty beneficial, but we haven't fixed it. You know, we're still the same as everybody else. You know, A shift still stealing B shift's butter, and C shift still stealing A shift's sugar. So we're still 3 separate departments, you know, working in one firehouse. But it has helped. You know, the days of that stump the chump stuff, or chump the whatever it is, That's got to go. It doesn't do anybody any good. Don't try to prove that you're smarter than the next guy or anything like that. Sometimes I feel like guys try to do that knowledge is power thing, and that's just silly. Get the information out there. Let guys know what you're going to train on. I'm sure we're going to talk about some training things, and I got some ideas that we've implemented, getting guys out and forcing them to do things, and then that whole empowerment thing. But
excellent. Cap?
Well, New York City is a little different because we don't work an ABC shift. We work the group chart, and it's very, very complicated until you learn it, and then it's simple. But the group chart is, wait a second, because I always have one with me. It's just a series of numbers, and it tells you when you're working. Your number is on here, you're working, and it's real simple. But the thing with that is we have companies, and the companies, you have a captain who's ultimately responsible. And in the New York City mode, the captain says it doesn't happen. The lieutenant says, well, it doesn't happen on my shift. Okay. But the captain is ultimately responsible because he oversees the lieutenant. So the thing about this whole idea is that if you are doing training and you're not buying into what the company policy is, you're not buying into the New York City or the San Francisco or the Ottumwa, Iowa, or the Houston, Texas, if your company's not doing the way the department says to do it, and something happens, that's going to be a huge issue. And we have had incidents where officers did not follow procedures and got themselves in trouble. So you have to understand, if you decide that, the old man says that from now on, we got to be a backup line. Screw that. We want to get to the fire. We're going to go to the floor above. And then somebody gets burnt on that initial line because they lose water. You might be held responsible, and you could be in trouble.
Excellent. Well, and that goes right to, as Brian said, training to your POAs, your SOPs, or whatever it is that you have as well. And we've seen that as well. One of the issues that I saw, and I've seen this around the country, is we all, there's enough, I guess, enough slogans, every day is a training day, and, train till you can't get it wrong. And obviously we believe in that, but we also know that there's going to be days where it doesn't get done the right way, that there's, that they ran a bunch of runs or whatever went on, and it just, guys come in and they just didn't feel like doing it so well that day. And we have to overcome that. And the other thing that I've found is we've had officers who weren't motivated to get it done. So unfortunately, that became a problem with the vacuum and leadership. So I think to that end, how do we kind of have the tail wagging the dog a little bit as well? Where do we give the empowerment of the guys? Where is that self-motivation, other than on, Facebook?
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
What's that, Brian?
No, I'm sorry, you were cutting out. I was just going to say it's an absolutely great point. I think that, all the slogans are great, and you go to any training program, you're going to see fight like you train like you fight and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a cultural thing within your organization, as Cap Dugan said, within that company. If every day you come in and all of a sudden, 27 shifts into your new captain's promotion, you decide, hey, we're going to make today a training day, guys are going to look at you like you got three heads. Yeah. And vice versa, you're not going to come in that first day and try to conquer the world. But that's an organizational thing and a cultural thing that if you're going to be successful in implementing good training, it's just got to be part of the routine, just as much as cleaning the toilets, just as much as the time you eat, the time you work out. It's got to be part of that culture. And once it's part of the culture, then the guys just expect it. They know it's coming. They're not surprised by it. They embrace it, and they're actually, if you do it right, they're probably looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. And I think the other thing that, listen, if you do training, I was a young, motivated, probationary firefighter in the city of New York, and I had an officer who read the books to us. It was like I wanted to be training. I wanted to be doing this stuff. It was like a slow dose of Sominex. Everybody at the table was sleeping, nodding their heads. Okay. It can't be like that. If you are a company officer and you go out and you find a point to train, you find something in your district, you find something in your area, you go out and you do it and you get there and you train. If they say you have to train from 1,500 to 1,600 hours every day, well, you say, you know what, we decided to train at 1,200 hours because we were out on a run and saw a weird building and we spent an hour going over this building. And I used to have chiefs come by and say, I'm not going to go check on Mike Dugan to see if he's training because I know he's trained his company that day because they go out every time. At 3 o'clock in the morning, if we had a car wreck and something happened and we had people who were put themselves in danger by not looking back at the roadway or something, we would have a drill before we went back to bed. We would train on that stuff. The other thing that's very important for me is the lack of leadership, that vacuum that you talked about. I remember being an officer and being very, very overwhelmed with paperwork one day. And my guys came to me and said, hey, Cap, we're going to do a drill. We've got a hose line and we put air in it and we shut it. We put a gate on it. We shut it off. And now we got a charged hose line. And we're going to put a fireman at the end of the hose line in the basement of the firehouse. And we're going to go down and give it, rescue the guy and see where he is off the nozzle and everything else. And of course, I had all this paperwork to do, but what did I do? I joined the training. And I stayed up an hour and a half later. That night, I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning doing the paperwork. But you set the tone as the boss when you're doing this stuff. And I think that's very, very important.
I think Captain Dugan, your point's right on. When you get promoted up to these positions of lieutenant captain and above or whatever, you're promoted, not necessarily your leader. Let's all be clear on that. I think everybody agree with that. But people want to be led. People want to genuinely feel like they're part of a team, like they're working towards a greater cause. There's something that they're doing. And too many times, oftentimes more than not, you find these guys that get promoted to company officer or whatever that are like, we're going to take the day off because that's easy and that's what the guys want. And they want to be a friend more than they want to be the boss. And it's a delicate balance, and you see good company officers can do it. And there's nothing wrong with being their friend and that sort of stuff at the firehouse. But to your point, going down and joining those guys, you're part of that team. And maybe you didn't take the lead every time and showing them everything, but you empowered those guys to do the right stuff. And that's textbook right there. You're in your office and you got your company out there doing training without you even knowing it. That's when you've hit a home run in the fire service, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So we're getting Artie back up here shortly, although that's his feet now instead of his face. But I know you're challenged with this technically, Art. Anyway, when you get that thing spun back around, jump in. So, and it's funny you talk about after a run, Cap, going and doing something. Yesterday, I was riding a seat, and it was my platoon, and we did an overturned out on the highway and state police and all that stuff. And the victim itself extricated, God only knows how. And the state police were saying, well, we need to get into that vehicle to get the paperwork out of it. And, we got some fluids out and all that. And one of the guys says, hey, Cap, any chance we can use that new windshield saw? Yeah, why not? This is a good place to train. The car's already totaled. Who cares what we do to it? So we told the troop, we'll get the paperwork for you. And I had 2 kids on the rig riding the back step. That one has about 1.5 years and the other has about 6 months. And go get the tools. And they did it. And really, it served as a drill for them. And it was something that, even though it was in the training log for later in, probably next month or the month after when we get some more cars, boom, you just got a really quick drill that you really weren't planning on, but it was one more thing to add to the toolbox at the next trip. So
taking advantage of those opportunities as a company, Cap Dugan said, when driving by those buildings, you see an odd building, stopping and looking at it. It doesn't have to be that 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we got to train, so we're going to find something. It's taking advantage of that opportunity when it faces you, whatever it might be. Hey, hoses on the ground, let's practice doing this or that. Or, hey, we're at this building, let's get the ladders off and climb on this roof. Or, let's look at this alarm panel with an automatic alarm. There's so much stuff. We focus on so many different things that sometimes I think we pass up those key opportunities. It doesn't have to be, I feel like at the company level especially, it doesn't have to be this like long, drawn-out training program. It can be 10 minutes staring at an alarm panel so guys can understand, hey, you know, this is how we silence this type of alarm, or these are some of the hazards associated with this building if you come back here. You know, and it's those sort of things that guys, I think sometimes at the company level they miss because they're just that captain's so used to just doing it that we don't pass it on to the next generation of company officers that are coming up behind us that are going to take our spots.
Yeah. You know, I saw that happen in a volunteer fire service even more than I see it at work. When I was riding as a volunteer chief, the last couple of years, I knew I wasn't going to be the chief after that. And I started thinking to myself, you know, I answer like 90% of the runs. So if I keep taking command of everything, what are the guys below me going to have as far as a real reference base of their own ability and their own experience? And so the last year that I rode as the chief, I really only went on the radio at times when it sounded like it was going to be something that I needed to be in the middle of. Otherwise, I wanted the assistants and the captains to get a little better grip on what they were doing, you know, kind of that get ready because here it comes, fellas, and give them the preparation. And we do that throughout the fire service. You pass the test, boom, you're in. Maybe we give you a little bit of officer training. You know, the small departments, very rarely you jump right in and away you go. So that's another great point that you got, Brian. Artie, do we have you? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, well, here's a good point too. If anybody would like to send us some comments or questions, we have you can get us on Twitter at hashtag FE Talk, and we'll be sure to get to your questions, whatever you have, comments. We certainly want your input, and we want to share this with you. So I guess one of the other things that we can bring up, and I've been going through this at work quite a bit and talking with some of the other guys that I know that do it as well. We're trying to, like we said, get uniform. So we're all still going to do things a little differently and with our own quirks, no matter how big or small our department is. But how do we ensure that their training is really getting done and really meeting the intent of whoever is putting the training out? Are we meeting our objectives? Are we really doing that? And how do we gauge that beyond just reading drill reports and entering them in the computer? So any ideas with that?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. On some of that, I mean, just reading reports, just reading the drill manual or something else, you have to get out of the firehouse. But the other thing that we have to do is make things safe. Now, we just had a training accident that was fatal.
Yeah.
And we lost a brother climbing an aerial. Now, I can't tell you the number of times my guys have climbed the aerial. And could it have happened to us? Absolutely, positively. I used to make my guys go out in the snow and practice going up on a roof because it's going to be a slippery roof. And a lot of the roofs in Brooklyn are sloped with no back parapet. Mm-hmm. So you have to know how to go up on this roof. And I remember an older black gentleman walking by, looking at us climbing up with the aerial raised across the street from the firehouse on a vacant building. And he goes, "You guys are crazy." But you have to train realistically. Now, I wouldn't put a brand new rookie firefighter on the roof on a snowy day. That's not fair to him. But I would train them on what to expect when they get there and how they're going to do it. If we had a fire, I would take him up after the fire up onto the roof and show him what the roof man encountered. And you have to make the training realistic. I mean, anybody could read. I mean, you could read me War and Peace. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to get it much out of it if you're reading it to me. I have to tactically feel it. I have to know what I'm doing, and I have to be part of this. And I think that's where the company officer, he knows where his people are lacking. And a good company officer builds a great relationship with his senior people who know what's going on in the firehouse. I remember Sorry, I was just muted. I remember my senior guy coming to me. Thanks, Art. My senior guy coming to me one time and saying, "Hey, Cap, you know, we just had a fire. I'm holding a drill in the kitchen." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "You're not invited." And I'm like, "Okay." And I missed something at this job, but there was something that he was embarrassed about as being the senior man. And he told me to get a cup of coffee, go into my office and do the fire reports. Okay. And I think that's all part of what we have to do as company officers. We have to look at our people. I had another time the guy told me we were training too hard.
Right.
You know, he goes, "You're killing the guys, Cap." Okay, that's fine. I take it under advisement. So I think it's all part of what we do is that we have a relationship and we know what's going on. You said you have 2 young guys on your shift in a firehouse. You have to train for those people.
Yeah.
Because as Brian said, they're the up and coming. They're going to be your replacement. Maybe 8, 10 years from now, they're going to be taking you over.
Wait till Mike stops talking. You guys hear me now?
We can hear you now, Artie. You're just echoing.
Like I said, I'm technologically not savvy. It's not working well for me. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you now. So folks, this is Art Bloomer. Art is
Going through Shannon, so I apparently have pushed the wrong buttons.
apparently.
Shocker.
All right. Well, Art, I'll introduce.
It's cut my mustache off. I can't help it.
There you go. I'll introduce you, and then we want to get your input. We really do. That's why you're here. So, folks, this is Art Bloomer. Art is a captain in Kearney, New Jersey, and also serves as the volunteer chief in Herbertsville, New Jersey, in Ocean County, with many years on the job, and still going strong, and teaching at FDIC and all over the country. So we definitely want Artie's input on this. So, Art, as we were talking about, we're talking about this, how the training officer or the company officer gets this to the guys, and what are the challenges that you see, both at work and in your firehouse where you volunteer?
I think he asked you the question between volunteers and career with the training.
Yep.
All right. One of the things that I've noticed a lot recently is it's the biggest problem we have is the fact that we don't train often enough, and we're trying to pick the topics that are important to the crews. And compared to the career department, I get the beginning of each month from the training office. They send us down the suggested drills for the month. Actually, they're more mandated than they are suggested. And a lot of the times it doesn't match up with what my crews need. We're, and as I've told you before, Aaron, and I think I've talked to Mike about this before, our biggest problem in the past few years is we've taken on so many new members. I'm stuck with having to train a lot of brand new people come through. The newest people I have are about 3 months out of the fire academy. And I'm trying to balance drills between guys I have in the house now that have 10, 15 years on the job with people who are 3 months. It's kind of hard to do that. So I usually I come in the morning and I'll go to the senior guys and say, where are we lacking? What do we need to do? And I observe that at the fires too. And the biggest thing is balancing out. What I've tried to do with newer firefighters is to pair them up with a mentor, older firefighter, a senior guy, a senior girl, and work with them on what their weaknesses are. And that's why I tend to balance the needs of what they need during the daytime drills to what is going to benefit them and get them to be better firefighters and to walk onto the job. I expect the other day we had a young firefighter that was coming to the truck because that's the only place they could put him that night. They didn't have enough money, the engine out of the house. And when I asked to go get a hook, it came back. We're on the second floor of the house, and I got an 8-foot hook come back with the person was 2 feet tall. So the training was a little lacking there. So that's where I knew my next day's worth of training with the career guys was working with proper and stuff like that. So I think that is the biggest problem. The times is I'm getting shown from the chiefs certain things that they want covered, but it doesn't always match up with what they need to show the new people. The career.
That's an interesting point, because we have set stuff that we have to do. Whether it's not the exciting stuff, and it's not, in my eyes, the stuff that is truly the bread and butter of the job, and what I want to be doing with my guys. You know, the bloodborne pathogens and the right to know and all that, and some of the EMS refresher stuff that we do, that we constantly redo. It may be what's on for that week, you know, for that platoon. But exactly as you said, you've got a bunch of young guys. It's the same thing with what I'm seeing now. So I've got to supplement what comes out of the general calendar, basically. And I think that a good company officer sees those weaknesses, addresses those weaknesses, and really attacks the schedule with those. Brian?
Yeah,
I think that's definitely a big problem. I said with the volunteer career, my biggest problem is getting what I like to call realistic training out to them. And we go to fire academy, we can throw all the fake smoke and fake fire, not fake fire, but the propane tank, which we can turn on and off the switch, because especially we're a little bad, we can't burn too much down. But getting a quiet structure, so like I said, we had the fire the other night. We get enough work, but we don't get as much as we need. But the biggest thing I take them at fires, we don't want to destroy any of the building that's already been not been taken by the fire. But once we get into the fire's knocked down and the overhaul mode, is sometimes the only place I can really take them and show them things that I can't show them on the patio level or back of the firehouse, like opening up walls. And it's one of those things I said, hey, just take a second out here and I'm going to show you what I want you to do while you're doing it. And that seemed to work out pretty good. Is the biggest problem is to have realistic training opportunities for firefighters. And if you don't want to go in somebody's house that's already been attacked and pretty much damaged or destroyed by fire, that is a training. That's all I have sometimes. We can't get into acquired sheetrock walls. I can show them that punch technique to get into the wall with the hooks, or how to pull a ceiling correctly. I've had more firefighters, persons trying to do what they know, what they've learned in firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and they're trying to now take to the real fire ground. It's very hard. And it's even worse for the volunteer because I only get them twice a month for training. The career, we're in every day, and I can go over how to use a tool day after day, but until they actually can put it to the wall or actually cut a roof, it's the only thing if I have good training.
Gotcha. Okay. Brian, you there, bud?
I'm here. Sorry, I was plugging my computer in.
That's cool. That's cool. Hop in.
You're getting a little power.
Hop in.
No, I was just going to say regarding the company training is the two things. One is, it doesn't have to be, we've talked about it earlier, is it doesn't have to be this long, elaborate thing. I think a lot of guys get hung up in, they're so used to those battalion level or department district-wide trainings that are an hour or 2 hours long. Company level training could be going over a specific tool for 15 minutes during your truck checkouts. It can be, as Captain Dugas said, taking 20 minutes while you're getting your groceries and walking through the building. It can be those impromptu opportunities that face your company throughout the day. As a matter of fact, I think those are the greatest company trainings because, I believe in this 4 times 15 equals an hour of training thing. If you're not getting a lot of jobs, and I think we can all truly be honest with ourselves. Some departments are getting a lot more fires than others, but for the most part, a lot of us aren't getting the fire volume that per se we'd like to get, which is good. In the community, risk reduction model, that's a great thing. But that being said, we still got to be prepared and ready for that fire. So if my guys come in and we do the 48-hour shift, if they get training on that first day at 9 a.m. related to fire, and we haven't run a fire call, per se fire call, whatever it might be, for 14, 16 hours, and then all of a sudden the bell hits, have I done my due diligence as a company officer to remind them, 1, they're on duty as a firefighter, and 2, to keep them engaged. And so I think that throughout those days, throwing those things at guys, even if it's just something like, hey, did you guys see that on the news? Or did you guys see this type of thing? Or, hey, why don't we walk outside and go check out this? I know we have set working hours, but if you got a good crew and you've set a culture that you respect their time, they respect you as a company officer, I don't think you're going to have any issues with that. And the second thing, too, is organizationally, I think you got to make it a priority. You got to make that time priority. And I know within our organization, something that I started implementing as a company officer, training officer, was the hour to tower concept. So I was able to block out quarterly for our guys, our companies, to go down to the tower, and they got 1 hour out of service beyond the battalion trainings and district trainings we did, to where they could do whatever they wanted. Minimum, they had to pull a line. So that company officer was then able to do a needs analysis on his company and say, hey, these are things that I want to focus on. So it kind of took the ownership off that company officer a bit, because then he was able to say, hey, we got to do this training, guys. I got to make it happen. Let's go down there. And then the guys got into it. Well, now I got guys coming to me like, hey, when are we going to do that hour tower again? When's that going to happen again? I want to get down there. I want to get my company down there. So some of those things I think are just things that as we, evolve and things like that within your organization to try to work on.
I would like to say something also on this concept, because I understand we have to do bloodborne, we have to do hazmat, WMD, whatever else is out there. In the city of New York, we have to have all of that training. But a good fire officer is also training his people. And if you have to do an hour and a half drill on whatever the subject is, bloodborne pathogens or right to know or whatever else, and then you went on a run and you have, as Brian said, that 15-minute drill. Did you see this? This is a replacement door. They bolted this door in when they broke the old door down. We've been here a couple of times. This is a frequent flyer building. Do you know where the fire escapes are? Do you know how many apartments there are per floor? Do you know what's going on here? All of those things are very, very important that we do on a company level. And I understand we got to do training, but a good firehouse wants to train anytime, anywhere. And I mean, I've had drills at midnight sometimes. And one of the things that we have to be aware of is if something happens, and I understand union rules of work time and whatever else, but if at 3 o'clock in the morning we come back from a fire and someone got themselves in trouble, somebody did something wrong, union rules or not, I'm having a drill. If something happened and I almost got a brother or sister hurt, injured, or killed, we're having a drill and we're talking about what happened there and figuring that out. Okay, I'm not waiting until the next shift or anything else. We're having a drill now if something went wrong there to correct a mistake. If somebody did something wrong, and it could be my mistake, and nobody picked up on it or nobody backed me up, and I didn't have somebody watching out for something I did, we will make sure that we have a drill and talk about it. And it could just be as simple as sitting in the kitchen, having a glass of ice water, or I used to have a cup of coffee. Didn't matter, but whatever it is, and just talk about what happened.
Excellent. Exactly. And, it's funny you say that, because one of the stories that came to mind was when I was probably an 18-year-old kid in the volunteer firehouse, and we went to a car fire, and it was a car fire off the road, a stolen car, and state troopers were there. And Chief told us to stretch the 1 3/4, or back then it was probably 1.5 inches off the back of the rig, and we stretched and we made a pile of spaghetti, and myself and the other kids screwed it up royally. And of course, this call's at like 2 in the morning, and it just happens that the state trooper is the fire chief's brother. And he tore into the chief, Jesus, don't your guys train? I can't believe they couldn't stretch on a car fire. And I remember going back to the firehouse, and back then we rode the tailboard and hearing on the speaker on the tailboard the order from the chief: nobody leaves the firehouse till I get there. Well, we stretched about 8 more times off the back of that rig on a Tuesday or Wednesday night at 3 or 4 in the morning until we got it where he wanted it done right. And I can tell you, since that day, I've never screwed a stretch up nearly as bad as I did that night. So you take it as a learning experience. But, one of the things that we talked about, and I think is important too, is the company officer needs to be flexible in everything we do. They need flexibility. Like you said, Mike, maybe it's drilling at midnight after we got done with something, or yesterday on my drill schedule, I was supposed to be doing master streams with the guys and hydrant hookups and master streams, and it was raining sideways most of the day here. So instead, I had the best rope guy working with me. We went to work in the engine room and we drilled on ropes, and that was really kind of it was that flexibility. The young guys needed it. Okay, we can always hit the hydrant another day, you know, and let's do that. So, and I think that from the chiefs down, they need to understand and give that flexibility to the company officers. And that's one of the questions that we have that you guys can hop in on and give an answer to from fireengineering.com is how do you coordinate company level training versus department level training? So who wants to jump in there? Artie, you able to get up and talk or no?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, it's the company level training. Like I said, my department, they mandate certain topics they won't cover. And I understand that. And they're looking at our biggest problem. We've taken on a lot of specialty stuff. We do the tech rescue. We have the fireboat stuff that now that the one level's back. So the chief wanted to see certain things. And I think you guys are just, made a good example of. I have to watch. I have to observe my crews working, and the other crews working, and for with skill, you need to get back jobs. What didn't work? What did work? Do we need to practice for work and practice for this? I'm always a good exercise. Very useful that you're lacking. And I took good feedback from the crews and these guys to take or recently now, the younger guys just saying, I really didn't get enough spot time in the academy. And I said, all right, well, we'll start out with the pallets in the back of the firehouse. You used to work at the store on the field. The biggest thing on the company level, I think you can deal with each officer should look at the strengths and weaknesses of the individual firefighters and try to build a daily program of getting them up with the basics before I think some of the departments spend way too much time with it. That once in a while with the special ops stuff. That stuff is important to know if your department's doing it and putting the boat out in the water for, but they need to know lines, the whole, the concept of fire pack in general. It's truck and engine work. Until they master that, the other stuff has to be looked aside. The company office level, that company also has to observe what the members are doing, recognize weaknesses, and set up a program and get, like Mike was saying, you just don't want to say, hey, you guys got to do it today. You want them enthusiastic to do it too. So if they see they're learning and bettering themselves in the job, instead of just saying, all right, well, this is read Norman's, chapter 15 today. That's today's drill. That's, you're showing them information, but you're not getting your hands on the tools. I'm a big proponent. I know you're part parent. You got to get your hands on the tools and operate. You can't just read his book and become an expert.
I'd like to say something on that, and something also on what you said, Aaron. You said you had one of your rope guys working. And so instead of having a hydrant drill, you had a rope drill. And Artie was just talking about special operations and all of the stuff that's there and the things like that. If you have to do a drill on the boat and you have the guy who's a commercial fisherman, who's a boat guy working, that's the day you have that drill. If you have to have a rope drill, you have the rope guy working. Listen, I had a guy who was great with ropes. His father was in Rescue 1. He was unbelievable. And I would sit down at the rope drills. I wouldn't hold the rope drill. He knew more than I did. A good company officer knows the strengths and weaknesses of those people and knows his own strengths and weaknesses. And will admit that there were people, I don't tie knots. I tie a lots. I just keep wrapping it around. And that's okay, because I have people working with me who show me. I knew the basic knots, but all of these Prusiks and the slippery hitches and all this, forget it. I don't do it enough. Okay, they knew it. They worked with it. They were so good at it. If you had a tree guy working and you're having a chainsaw drill, there's your guy for the chainsaw. You had a guy who used to be in a hazmat company and you're having a hazmat drill, there's your drill guy. Give it to the people who know the most. A good officer knows what his strengths and weaknesses or her strengths and weaknesses are, and they do what's right. It might not be comfortable, but it's right, because your people are getting trained by the best that are out there.
And you know what? I learned that a long time ago, that I watched guys who were trying to do it and do it all, and I found this especially in certain companies and even in the volunteers, where the chief of the department always led the training. And he may have been great at engine stuff or great at water supply, but he was not so great at throwing ladders, but yet he was going to teach the ladders. And as a student, I sat back and went, man, somebody's got to know better than this guy. He's a great commander, but he's not too good on these portables. There's got to be a better way. And that was something that I saw years ago and said, I like instructors who really do specialize. Artie's probably one of the best tech rescue guys I know, and a great truck guy, but I've never seen him teach too much engine stuff, because even though he knows it, it's not his forte, as opposed to a guy like you or a guy like Champ, who teaches so much truck because you've lived the truck for so many years. And you utilize who you've got. And I think that, number one of the parts of one of the things that came in on our hashtag FE Talk was that you empower your people. And by empowering your people, they don't need rank, they don't need bugles or certain colored helmets to do a good job and lead the guys. So listen, as Cap said, you got somebody who knows what he's doing in a certain aspect of it. Not only is he training our guys, we're building our competency, but you're preparing him to take the next step in his career as well. And I really do like that, and I respect that a ton. And it's good to see. It's just one of those things.
And the other thing about that I find very good for the company is it empowers younger firefighters and younger members to step up when they are good at something. I remember when I was a young probie, they asked me what I had done before I became a fireman. I said, well, I was a cop for a little while, and then before that, I was a machine remover. And they were like, oh, you were a rigger? And I'm like, yeah. And they go, oh, okay, we're going to talk to you about certain things, like when we came to using the grip hoist or the come-alongs or other things. How are you going to set this up? Okay, you want this in this way, so you're not going to get, and they would be like, oh, okay. And we use those skills. There were guys who were carpenters. They were our guys on the building construction. There were guys who were roofers. When we went on the roof of a building, the roofers always walked around and said, see what you got here? This is where they covered over something. There's probably a skylight under here in the old days. And they could just look at the roof and figure it all out. And they trained you. And everybody had a weakness. Everybody had a strength. But we worked together because we raised everybody up by sharing our knowledge.
Yep. And we got another comment in, and it says, a good officer knows their own strengths and weaknesses. It's okay to not be a know-it-all and instead teach what you know best. And that's exactly. And I think as a young officer, I probably didn't understand that quite as much, but as the more this mustache is turned white, I think you learn it. And you know what else you learn? You learn by going to places and watching masters of the craft. My example would be at FDIC. I can go to a class and I see that person. A good example, a good friend of mine would be Carl Haddon, who teaches extrication. Carl's a damn good fireman. He doesn't teach firefighting. He teaches extrication because to him, that's his premier, programs. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and that's what we should be playing to, and within the company. And even within the department itself, I work in a relatively small department. We're 25 or 130 guys now. They just swore 6 guys in the other night. But in that case, across town, they've got some guys who are better at certain things than I am, and there's nothing wrong with saying at the top levels, hey, can you send me over that captain to teach this program to all of us? It just makes a lot more sense to me. So that's a big deal. One of the other things that we talked about, and I think that let me real quick. Brian lost his internet connection, or he'd be on here with us. Hopefully he'll get back in. But anyway, one of the big things is needs assessments of your own group. Again, we know that we're going to have these drills coming down from the battalion or coming down from the chief or the training division or whatever our department's hierarchy is. I've always been a big fan of looking at what's needed in my company and addressing it in addition to everything that they've got going for us. And we work a 24-hour shift, and it's tougher to volunteers because you've only got so many hours to train with the guys. But you've got to look at your weaknesses and attack them in addition to what's coming down the pike. So, Cap?
Yeah, I think that's so important, and I think you hit on a major point. Listen, you're in the firehouse as a career firefighter. You're in the firehouse for 24 hours or 48 hours, okay? If you give the fire service 2 to 4 hours, 2 hours every tour, okay? 4 hours every 48, okay? 1 hour to drill that the department wants you to have. 1 hour to drill that the company officer wants you to have. And you spend that time working to get better at your craft. I think you should spend even more time, but I'm prejudiced. You know, read an article, read something, read fire engineering, read a book, read a Vinnie Dunn book, talk about a collapse of a burning building, talk about safety and survival on a fire ground, or talk about a leadership, something else. You know, use military history, whatever else. Yesterday was the D-Day, okay? Again, these are all good things for us to do, but you have to be a student of the game, okay? Because what happens is everything we do can change or kill us, okay? You know, we talked about the adages, you can never train hard enough for a job that can kill you, okay? That's one of the greatest ones I've ever heard. And yeah, it can. And so spending the time training and doing those things. And the other thing on the training, the last thing I will say before I let Artie take over is I always like to say to the guys that we would spend 75% of our time on training to do things right, the right way to do it. The other 25% would be training if something went wrong, okay? Because it is easier to keep out of trouble than it is to get out of trouble. But train to keep out of trouble, to do things the right way, and then train if somebody else gets in trouble, how you're going to get them out of it.
Yeah, definitely. I was just listening to you guys were saying before. The big thing, and Aaron pointed out, I'm not an engine guy. We're a small department in Kearney, and we have to cross the floors. I mean, I'm mainly on the truck company, but I'm lucky I have my junior captain in my house who's in the engine, so I have him spend a lot of times with the guy. He knows the talk first of all. I know what I got to do when I go in and stuff like that, but it's good to have the versatility with other members in there. And like I was saying before, and Mike just brought out too, the books. We can't have them hands-on the tools all the time. They do have to get into the books. I'm lucky that I've got the group of guys that have come in over the past couple of years as new members in the department. I've got this. Listen, when I see you, I don't want to see you on your phone. I don't want to see you watching TV unless you have a book nearby. And Aaron was saying before the tech rescue, we've got you to throw off the floor from that end. So I've got sitting behind the squad company in the house. We're a 2-piece house, actually 3-piece if we count the out-of-service rescue. I said, you know, we still have to, if the call comes in for rescue, we got to go out. So I tell the guys to sit and watch a movie at night. Grab a piece of rope and just keep tying your knots while you're watching the movie. It helps you know, the guys with the dexterity of tying the knots and like keep it in the book. I want to see you with the book in front of you opened up reading every once in a while. You know, the biggest problem with all these new firefighters coming through is they're tied to that phone. We all grew up, all of us here were a few years older than most of the young kids that are in, and we never had, you know, you kept that dime in your pocket to the payphone, but the phones are big different. Social media, they're on and off that all the time, and we all know where social media goes, but I think you both make that point very clear, is you got to see what the firefighters need, you got to keep them interested in, like Mike says, learning the craft, learning your skill. And like you said, you can't train someone for a job that can kill you. And another thing I've seen out there is you have to train so you can't get it wrong. And I think that's another important thing. You know, you got to get the muscle memory down. You got to get things why you're doing what you're doing. Instead of just reading the book saying, this is why you need to learn this. They need to see it in real life. And if you're not in a really busy department, you don't get as much as the fires on a daily basis. They're sometimes surprised by certain things, and we have to, as company officers, anticipate that what they're going to need in the way of training on a regular daily basis, on top of like just getting the basics done. You got to get them ready for the unexpected stuff too.
Excellent. Well, and all great points. We're getting towards the end of our hour, so I wanted to, you know, get our final thoughts, and in the process, thank those that we should, and throw out a couple reminders. So, Mike, any final thoughts?
Sorry, trying to unmute it.
That's okay.
Yeah, listen, train. Training pays immeasurable dividends. Not only do your people learn how to do it right and learn how to do it by that muscle memory that Artie talked about, but they also build company spirit, esprit de corps, and they also learn about each other. And they know what, you know, Mike Dugan is good at, what Aaron Heller's good at, what Artie Bloomer's good at, what Brian's good at, everybody else, what Sarah's good at, what Sue is good at. It doesn't matter what Shannon does well. And we learn our crew, and we now know how to depend on each other. And that pays immeasurable dividends, because when it goes bad, it doesn't just happen because one thing goes wrong. A bunch of things go wrong, and that's when we get in trouble, and it snowballs and it rolls, and we get on that hamster wheel. Okay, we have to have ways to get off it by recognizing it, by knowing each other, knowing what's going on, and stopping somebody from doing something wrong with the ropes, stopping somebody from doing something wrong with the saw, by stopping us from doing these things, because we have worked together and trained, and we know them and we know how they work.
Absolutely, Cap. You know, and Shannon gave us a good quote of her own, and she said, "We learn best that which we do." And I think that is absolutely the case. The more we do it, the better we are at it, the better the outcome, the better chance of going home, you know, and everything that we roll into it. So as we get to the end of today, first off, I want to thank the guests. Artie, I'm glad you were able to get on here with us, and we'll get you figured out on all your technological issues and be ready for the next time. But and Brian, I hope you got to at least listen to the end of it. But I really appreciate you coming on, and Cap, like always, you know, just a home run, and it's truly appreciated that you could step in for Steve. I'm sure Steve will be back next month along with Brad French and hopefully myself, and we'll let you know what that topic's going to be once we discover it here in the next couple of weeks. But a couple reminders. One is that the cutoff date is this month to get your submissions in to present something at FDIC for 2018. So the cutoff date is June 23rd, and you need to have that in. It can't be half done. It can't be just sitting in the proposal, not sent yet. There is no, hold on, Diane, please wait another day for me. They get, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of submissions, and you do have a chance to get yours, because every year there's new submissions being accepted by FDIC International, and it's your chance to really do something big for the fire service, and it's always an honor to be a part of it. Again, I want to thank Fire Engineering for bringing this to us and letting us do this, and everybody at FDIC. And before we end, we want to, I really think it's important that we say that we've had Bobby Holton and his family in our prayers here in the last month. He's had a little rough go of it with some health issues going on in the family, and thank God they seem to be settling down and evening out. And I think the power of prayer was certainly on Bobby and his family's side in the last couple of weeks. So Bobby, if you're listening, we love you, and we're very happy, and thank God that things are improving for everybody on your side of the world. So with that, we're going to bid you a fair adieu and enjoy your afternoon. And again, thanks for spending time with us, and share this. You can catch it on the archive and watch it at the firehouse with the guys. So that's it for here, and we will see you next month. Thank you.